So hello students, welcome to the first lecture of computer intensive statistical methods. So I have already shared these notes with you in the WhatsApp group. I will be sharing them in the Google Classroom as well. So the first unit, as discussed in the earlier lecture, the live lecture which I conducted on Zoom, we had discussed that the computer intensive statistical methods. This course starts first with the simulations. So you might be already familiar with simulations. There are various ways to generate random samples, and then so many things can be done once we get the samples from a certain probability distribution or from a certain underlying statistical model. So the purpose of simulation and other things that we have already discussed. So let us first begin our discussion with the fundamentals of simulations. So in what ways can we generate random samples, or can we create models, statistical models through these samples? So how can it be done? How can we check how good the models are? Are they working well? What will happen if we don't have real data? So can we use the data which computer generates? So then how can we use computer to generate this kind of data? Not data, we call them as random samples, or we call it as simulations. So how can it be done? So you might have already learned how to generate a random sample in R from different probability distributions. There are certain commands, very simple commands. You might have also studied in your undergraduate courses without using computer how we can generate a random sample from a particular distribution. So what you used to do is, I think you used to use the random number table. I don't know now the current generation whether they are familiar with random number tables or not. But basically it used to be a number between 0 and 1, and then you used to invert it so that you get the required value of. So how do you invert it? On what is it based on? So if you recall, all this discussion is based on the fact that the distribution functions values are always lie between 0 and 1, and if you are dealing with a strictly continuous distribution function, then it will have uniform distribution over the interval 0 to 1 if you allow x vary over the real line. So using this fact, if we generate a random number from the interval 0 to 1, then that number can be treated as a random or as an observed value of the CDF f, and then using the inversion, means by inverting that f, we can go back to the observation x, for which fx will be equal to the value which you have generated. So this procedure you call as probably inverse transformation. So this procedure is very familiar, you have used it several times. So let us now study theoretically what is the basis of doing all this, and how does it work, and if it works, then can it be extended to a better version? How can we use the same technique to create different types of simulation generating procedures? So simulations basis starts with the method of inverse transformation. So we will be first studying inverse transformation, and to study inverse transformation we must know the concept of quantile functions. So let us see very briefly what do we mean by quantile function. You might have already studied quantiles, but what is a quantile function? Let us have a look at it. So you are already familiar with the concept of cumulative distribution function, briefly called as CDF. So if f is a CDF, then we know the four properties. F is non-decreasing, it is right continuous, this should be 1 and not half. This value should be 1. So as we know, f is non-decreasing, f is right continuous, fx right limit should be 1, left limit should be 0. So if this is the CDF f, then a quantile function q, which operates on the values open interval 0 to 1, and it takes values in the entire real line. It is defined as q at u is infimum of all x such that fx is greater than or equal to u. So such a function q is called as the quantile function of the CDF f. So I hope you have understood here. So this set AU is called as collection of all those x for which fx is greater than or equal to u. So if f is strictly increasing function, then this infimum means this there will be points, several points obviously, for which points for which fx is greater than or equal to u. So if f is strictly increasing, then you can write this as x greater than or equal to f inverse of u, and so this infimum will be simply f inverse u. And so as a result, when f is strictly increasing, qu will be simply f inverse u. So now let us briefly see the properties of uh, Q. So the first property is Q is non-decreasing. So how can we prove this? So here I have tried to explain it through a diagram. So suppose U1 and U2 are any two points in the domain of Q, that is in the interval 0 to 1. So I have shown 2 points here. This is U1, this is U2, and U1 is less than U2. So we want to show that Q is non-decreasing. So consider the sets. So the set is X such that Fx greater than or equal to U1, and the set, another set will be X such that Fx greater than or equal to U2. So try to understand these sets. So to understand them, I have drawn perpendiculars on the curve of F from the point U1, and then I have drawn another one on the X axis. So notice that these two, so here this point say A1 and this point is say A2. So notice that A1 is smaller than A2. So as a result, this set will be starting from, that is the set which is X such that Fx greater than or equal to U1. This will start from here. So all this entire portion of X, this is going to satisfy this condition that Fx greater than or equal to U1, and similarly all these points in this region, they are going to fulfill the condition that fx greater than or equal to u2. So clearly this set will be containing this set. So when you take the infimum of both the sets, the bigger set, the larger set will have smaller or equal infimum, and so we will have infimum of x such that fx greater than or equal to smaller than or equal to the infimum of the other set. So but this is nothing but qu1. So qu1 will be less than or equal to qu2, and so q is a non-decreasing function. Similarly, one can prove that q, the right hand limit of q is qu, so that is qu plus and qu minus, the left hand limits, they exist for every u. Then the third property is that au is an interval of the form closed interval a to infinity. Now how do we prove this? Notice that this is an important result, and it is extremely useful. So it gives you an idea about the kind of intervals you are going to get when you invert the CDFs. So how can it be done? How can we prove this? So for this, let us consider a point from the set AU. So suppose x1 is in AU and x1 is less than x2. So assume that there is another point, say x2, which is larger than x1. Now since x1 is in AU, so we have this condition is fulfilled by x1, and so if x1 will be larger than or equal to u. But notice that x1 is less than x2, and f is non decreasing, that being CDF. So fx2 will be equal to fx1 or it will be greater than fx1. So as a result, fx2 will be greater than or equal to u. Spend a minute over it. Since this x1 less than x2 will imply that fx1 is less than or equal to fx2, but fx1 itself is greater than or equal to u. So you will get u less than or equal to fx1, which is less than or equal to fx2. So fx2 automatically gets larger than u. So this implies that because the condition is fulfilled, so x2 will also belong to AU. Now notice that whenever this is the case, it is going to be true. For example, if you take a point from the set AU, and then if you look on its right side, then every time the point on the right side, that is the point larger than the point under consideration, will always belong to the same set. So what does it mean? It means that if I start with a particular point, say A, and if I assume that A is in set AU, then all the points on the right hand side of this point A will always be belonging to AU. So all the points on the right. So this means that this AU must be of this type. Means there is no limit, because all the points on the right of x1 are belonging to AU. So it means that there is no upper limit to the points which are belonging to AU. So I can go up to infinity, and so the interval should be of the type A to infinity. Now why closed interval? Spend a couple of seconds here. Why do we have to have it as a closed interval? Why not we have it as an open interval? You will realize that when we started this discussion, we assumed that the point is in AU. So this discussion is valid for all those points which are in the set AU. So the point is already there in the set AU, and so the interval will be a closed interval. Whatever boundary point you have, that point is also going to be belonging to AU. And so the interval will be of the type closed at the lower limit, and at the upper limit it is open, and in fact there is no finite upper limit. So this is an important result. I hope you will remember it properly. So now the next property which we are not going to prove, very trivial, that QU, the quantile function, is well defined, and it always takes finite values. It will be really interesting to see why it takes finite values. In fact, I would like you to spend some time on it, thinking why QU should always be finite. What makes QU take finite values only? Why it can't take the values like on the extended real line? Don't worry, the answer will be clear to you in a couple of minutes. So suppose QU is in AU. Oh, sorry, the result says that QU belongs to the set AU. Means what is QU? By definition, let us go back again, because this can be a bit tricky. So what is QU? QU is infimum of all those points. So the claim is this infimum is also going to satisfy this condition. What is the condition? So suppose infimum is achieved at point say R or say A. Suppose QU is A, means infimum is attained at point A. Then what they mean is that this point A is also going to fulfill this condition. It means that f of x will be f at A will be greater than or equal to u. So this is what they mean. So let us see if it is true or not. QU is in AU. So how can we prove it? So what is QU? QU is basically infimum of AU. What is AU? Collection of all x such that the CDF is at least U. So because it is an infimum, so by the definition there exists a sequence xn such that xn belongs to AU for every n greater than or equal to 1, and xn belongs to QU as well. So what is the meaning of this? So let us see how it can be proved. So let us take xn belonging to AU. So I have assumed a sequence of numbers. There is a correction. This should not be belongs to xn goes to QU. Xn converges to QU. This is what we assume. Xn is converging to QU, and xn, all the points in this sequence are from the set AU, such that the limit of this sequence of numbers is actually Q. So let us see how it can be done. How we can prove this. So xn is in AU. So fxn should be greater than or equal to U. Why? Because xn belongs to AU. So the condition is, what is the regularity condition of this set? That the point should be such that the value of the CDF at that point should be at least U. So if xn is greater than or equal to U. So if you take limit over n, now this is true for every n, right? All xn's are in AU. So this is true for every n. So you can take the limit over n. So if you take the limit over n, then you still get the limit also will be greater than or equal to U. Okay, so one part we have proven. Now let us consider the definition. So by definition of QU, since xn is in AU, so you will have xn greater than or equal to QU. Why? Because QU is the infimum. So xn will be greater than or equal to QU for every U. So what does it mean? it means xn will converge to qu from the right. So fxn will converge to f at qu. But f at qu, what is f at qu? But f at qu will be greater than or equal to u. Why? Why is it so? Why do you get f at qu greater than or equal to u? Think about it. Spend a couple of seconds here. Why do you think that f at qu will be greater than or equal to u? Notice that qu is the infimum of all x such that fx is greater than or equal to u. So what will happen when you apply f there on both sides? You will get f at qu greater than or equal to u. So as a result, this qu will be again in au. So this is how we prove that the point qu again belongs to the set au. That is, even at the point qu, the condition that fx greater than or equal to u will be satisfied. So what is the corollary of this? This corollary makes things very simple. It simply means that au should be of this type. So the closed interval a to infinity, there that point a is nothing but the quantile, value of the quantile function at point u. Go slowly, don't hurry. Spend enough time on all these properties. So now the next property is Q is left continuous. So let UN, how do we prove this? So the proof is really simple. I have already written all the necessary steps. It is very much similar to the earlier proof or the proof of F being right continuous. The proof is very much similar. So I think you will be able to understand this on your own. Then the seventh property is the CDF of Q is F. So it is very obvious. Again, this also you can prove very easily. Then Q has at most countable number of discontinuities. Why would it be so? Why Q will have any discontinuities? And if so, why countable number of discontinuities? Notice that there is a result associated with the discontinuities associated with CDF. The result says that the number of discontinuities, that is the number of points of discontinuity of a distribution function f, is always a countable set. So the same result you can use to prove that Q also has countable number of discontinuities. So now enough about quantile functions. Most of the theory which we wanted to discuss about the quantile function is done. So now let us consider some simple examples where we are calculating quantile function for the given cumulative distribution function. So let us see how it can be solved. So the first example, very simple one. The CDF is defined like this. It is 0 if x is less than 0. It is 1 minus p if 0 less than or equal to x less than 1. And it is 1 if x is greater than or equal to 1. So if you plot the CDF, it will look like this. So now let us try to find the quantile function associated with this CDF. So u is anywhere between 0 and 1. So what are the possibilities of u? Notice that this u represents the set of values assumed by this distribution function f. So notice that the distribution function, when you consider the values taken up by the distribution function, you should look at the y-axis. So look at the y-axis. Values like 0 and 1 are default values. So you don't need to consider them. Consider the open interval 0 to 1 because that is the set for which the quantile function is defined. So consider open interval 0 to 1. So you can notice that one distinct value, that is 1 minus p, lies in this interval. So clearly, when you consider the points u, you can classify them into two categories. One is where the points u lies between 0 to 1 minus p, and the other set can be all the values of u which lie between 1 minus p to 1. So let us compute quantile function for these two categories. I hope you have understood why we are considering these two categories in particular. So if u is between 0 to 1 minus p, then AU will be equal to, now by definition AU is collection of all x such that fx is greater than or equal to u. So consider somewhere here, suppose you have u. because it is between 0 to 1 minus p. So somewhere here you have u. So now what are the values of fx which are greater than or equal to this value of u? So it can be slightly smaller than 1 minus p. This u can be slightly smaller than 1 minus p. So even then the values of fx which are greater than or equal to this 1 minus u will start from the value 1 minus p onwards. Notice that f takes only 3 distinct values, means in short it's a step function. So it is 0 till point 0, then it jumps to 1 minus p and it remains there till x reaches point 1, and then at point 1 it jumps to the value 1. So this is how the step function works. So when u is between 0 to 1 minus p, notice that there are only two possible values of fx, which are 1 minus p and p, which are greater than this u, this value of u. Where is u? U is not negative. U is not equal to 0. U is greater than 0, strictly here. But it is less than 1 minus p. So somewhere here. So only two values are there. Only two distinct values of f are there which are on the right of this u. So it clearly means that when you consider all x such that fx greater than or equal to 1 greater than or equal to u, it will mean collection of all x such that fx is greater than or equal to 1 minus p, because between 0 and 1 minus p fx does not take any value between u and 1 minus p. From 0 it directly jumps to 1 minus p. It doesn't equal to u. So because the function is constant here, that is 0. So when you say au which is equal to collection of all x such that fx greater than or equal to u, it will simply mean collection of all x such that fx greater than or equal to 1 minus p. Now what is the collection of x such that fx is greater than or equal to 1 minus p? Starting from here. So which x values take starting from 1 minus p? Which x values take fx equal to this? So see here. So you were here now. Earlier you were here in this side and now you want to go back to here. So look at this here. Look at this side and try to conclude. So we are looking for all x, means here we are looking such that fx is greater than or equal to 1 minus p. So it means I should not consider these values of x. I should consider only these values. So x is between 0 to 1, starting from 0, and x is greater than or equal to 1. So clearly this set means collection of all x such that x greater than or equal to 0. So what is the meaning of this? So this is nothing but a closed interval, isn't this? This is just a closed interval 0 to infinity. So here for any u between 0 to 1 minus p, au is simply an interval of this type, closed interval 0 to infinity. So what will be the infimum of this? It will be simply the point 0. So see, as we had discussed earlier, we had shown that au is nothing but closed interval qu to infinity. So this qu here is lying here. This is nothing but 0. So for this range of values of u, the quantile function takes value 0. So okay, now only one part we have answered. Now what is the other possibility of u? So u will be between 1 minus p to 1. So let us take u lying between 1 minus p to 1. Then au will be collection of all x such that fx greater than or equal to u. So 1 minus p to 1. Now it is here. So it has crossed the value 1 minus p. So only one distinct value of f remains then there. That is 1. Because f does not take any value between 1 minus p to 1. It is either 1 minus p, the values. Look at the values assumed by f very carefully. It takes value 0, it takes value 1 minus p, or it takes value 1. Only these three possibilities are there. So our point u has already crossed the value 1 minus p. So when you consider collection of all x such that fx greater than or equal to u, you should only consider 1 to 1 and higher values of. Now fx, that being a CDF, it doesn't cross 1. It can be at most 1. So this au will be simply collection of all x such that fx greater than or equal to 1. But fx greater than or equal to 1 will simply mean fx is equal to 1, because fx can't be greater than 1. So this set simply gets minimize to collection of all x such that x greater than or equal to 1. And so this will be simply closed interval 1 to infinity, and so as a result qu will be equal to 1 here. So now if you want to cross check, you can simply take one particular value. So suppose u is 1 minus p, then what will be the value of qu? If u is exactly equal to 1 minus p, because here we did not include u equal to 1 minus p case. So when when u is exactly equal to 1 minus p, then by definition you can easily notice that still this explanation is valid, and so qu becomes 0. So thus the quantile function can be written as 0 if u is between 0 to 1 minus p, and it is 1 if u is between 1 minus p to 1. So here I have already written down, but you can easily notice that this is nothing but a Bernoulli random variable taking values 0 and 1. And what are the properties associated with it? So the probabilities are simply 1 minus p and p. So q is simply a Bernoulli random variable which takes value 0 with probability 1 minus p and takes value 1 with probability p. So now let us consider one more example. Okay, so now a slightly more complicated example.